So for those of you who are on my Instagram, lucky you, you get an idea of what it is I'm going to be talking about. And you see the poor swearing that I did in the title. That should give you a clue. I can remember the first time when I collected Superman comics. We're going to go a little bit over comics nostalgia, and then there'll be some nostalgia at the end of this video. If you want to if you want to stick around for the review and the score, well, then stick around for that. But there'll be some more content at the end of this video. I can remember when I collected comic books. I collected comic books shortly after Superman died, and then I got some of the John Byrne back issues. When Roger Stern was writing, you had Jerry Ordway, Dennis Jank. You had the Bognadovs, right? John Bog. You had Tom Grummett, Hazelwood, Dan Jurgens, and then Brett Breeding. They did The Death of Superman. And there were different people, Stuart Immonen, people, different artists, different writers, rotated in and out. Now this was the first time that I could remember the first time Lex Luthor fought Superman. Now this was when Lex Luthor had died. Fat old Lex, kind of very similar to Michael Cudlitz. Think of Michael Cudlitz as a 70-year-old man, 75, okay? An old curmudgeon, old fart, an old piece of shit, right? So he dies, and they save Luthor's brain because he had kryptonite poisoning. And then you see a fresh, strapping, like 28-year-old Australian immigrant becoming second Lex Luthor. So, but then that body dies because it's a clone, and sort of the clones of Metropolis what is it? To Cadmus. Cadmus was an important character in the '90s Superman stuff. It was like this sort of wicked laboratory where you had the Newsboy Legion. These were Jack Kirby characters. The Newsboy Legion, the Guardian, Dubalex, and they were all there to they were making like all kinds of weird shit. Okay. So Lex's body was failing. Lex Luthor 2 being Lex Luthor 1 because they saved Luthor's brain. And so he fights Superman in this armored suit. And very similar, I'll even show you the interior. What a fight this was. Now, Luthor's body was dying because the science experiments were proven to be there was a terrible flood that happened. Let me see if I can actually show you. Fuck. I don't want to damage this. This is an old comic book. This comic book in particular is, what was this made? July. This is over 30 years old as of this recording. And you notice that right away there's like these page, almost like they did this almost like Doomsday, The Death of Superman. In The Death of Superman, you had Man of Steel and you had The Adventures of Superman. They were doing like 5 panels and 4 panels and 3 panels. And then you get to like the Man of Steel, it's 2 panels. And then when they got to Superman number 75, it was all these 1 panels. This is kind of the same way too. It didn't build up to 1 panels. So like I said, the 7-part series that ended up with Doomsday killing Superman, that was like they were counting down the number of panels per page in each issue. So this was not the same thing. This is just like, okay, Lex Luthor and Superman fight. This was taking place 2 years later when Superman got the mullet after he destroyed the cyborg, the Reign of the Superman. If you ever read The Death and Return of Superman, you know exactly what this was when, and this will make a comeback after Trump's administration. Okay, this is when you love to look at comic book women. This is a woman, not they them, not some potato sack Rose Tico. This was what comic book females looked like. Okay, that's what comic book women look like. Absolutely. Here's a couple of panels here though. So most of this stuff was like 1 panel, and this was like Lex Luthor fighting Superman. And it ends up with Superman killing, not killing. It ends up with Superman winning the fight, and Lex Luthor is too he's too weak, right? His body's dying. Is too weak to fight back without the suit. Uh, so that's unfortunate. And so this is a 30-year-old comic book. Lex Luthor could not fight back. He was still pissed off. He was mad at he fought Superman because he had nothing to lose. He killed his subordinate Happerson, which is not in this. We had Otis instead of Happerson, right? He killed Happerson because Happerson was going to destroy the whole city. Lex Luthor only destroyed 2/3 of the city, which it took Zatanna to go and reconfigure. And there was a whole 0 hour crossover and shit. But yeah, that was a good fight. That started a whole thing where Lex Luthor escaped Superman's vision. He couldn't his supervision. Superman couldn't find Lex Luthor for a whole year or so because Lex had evaded him. I think Lex evaded him for like 2 years because there was a whole other crisis dealing with the sun being destroyed by the Sun Eater, the final night, Hal Jordan's death. But Lex Luthor evaded Superman for capture for a couple of years for 3 years after this fight with in the Kryptonian war suit, right? So he was a fugitive because he was wanted for the destruction of for genocide, essentially. Okay, killing a lot of people in the city. Okay, the thing that's basically the thing that Superman did with Zod that Batman got pissed off about, Lex Luthor did it deliberately. He launched missiles at the city. And the last thing he did was fight Superman in that Kryptonian, that purple suit. Okay. Now let's get to Superman and Lois because that's what we're looking at here. There was a fight between Lex and Superman. You checked all the boxes. We saw a comic book fight. And Doomsday died. And Lex was like trying to kill Jordan. And Jordan and John reunite because John was almost dead. So Doomsday goes into the sun and disintegrates for some reason, even though that doesn't make a lot of sense. Lex, let's see. I think Amanda McCoy survived. Lex went to prison. Things are different. Yeah, we see the wedding of Lana and John Henry Irons. Now, I didn't know until after season 3 that in the comic books they got together. So something happened to Pete Ross because Pete Ross and Lana Lang were married 20 years ago. So I don't know what happened to Pete Ross. He died. He had an affair. I don't know what the fuck happened to Pete Ross. So something happened to Pete Ross. Pete Ross was white in the comic books, just the way it was. So, two people I didn't care about. Now, I cared about them a little more than Kyle Cushing and Christine Beppo, in which they have a child. Okay, so everything. So the wedding of John Henry Irons and Lana Lang take place 1 year later. They rebuild the little town. Everybody knows who Clark Kent and Superman are. Somehow, nobody bothers them, even though they have like no privacy at all because people know who they are, right? So the ending we get at the end of this damn episode is very, 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 very similar to Supernatural's final episode. Except that everybody's still around. We get these older, non-degenerate looking guys who played Jordan and John in their late 20s, early 30s. Okay. I guess. Wow, they look completely different. The whole thing with Clark getting old, dying on the street, dying in his deathbed at 65, 70 years old. Lois dies of cancer, a second cancer. Clark sees everybody but Sarah, and sees Lois in a weird, slutty red dress at the end. Okay. This episode really pissed me off. I think, yeah, even though, but there's a cool shot of Superman and the Superboys and the Steel and I forgot her name, Stila. Yeah, but it's like it's fanfare, but then we go back to the shitty parts of this that I don't care about. I don't care about the wedding between John Henry Irons and Lana. They were having relationship problems and they got married a year later. Did I really ask for that? Did I really care about that? No. So I felt that the whole thing was a fucking waste of my time. Like, we could have just Lex was being a piece of shit and did the Lex stuff that you kind of saw in Superman Batman Public Enemies or Superman Batman #6, done by Jeff Loeb, okay, and Ed Guinness. So that was done, and I just stopped caring about Lex. I didn't care about Lex anymore. I stopped caring about Lex Luthor, I think. No, I did care about him like a week ago and maybe a couple of weeks ago. But I really stopped caring after the first 2 episodes of season 4. When I saw Michael Cudlitz as Lex in the last 2 episodes of season 3, I said, this is good. This is good. This cannot possibly go wrong. Was I wrong? Yeah? And there is my review, my current mood for this shit. I'm going to give that a 1.5 to 2. Somewhere in there is my feeling of the whole thing. It checks the boxes. It ends the way it should end, with Lois and Superman and Lois at the end. But this was not Superman. This wasn't even Clark Kent. This was just some guy who had some powers. I don't know what DJ Eric or Eric Reloaded thinks of this, or his comrade, because I know he's the only other significant YouTuber. But I thought it was shit. I thought the ending was shit. Too much. It's not Crypto, it's Shelby. Crypto is a white, short-haired dog that I'm sure James Gunn will make that clear in his movie. And I remember Michael Cudlitz said, he said this before the episode premiered in the East Coast, okay, that the Superman trailer was not going to air during the episode, which probably would have been something, but it doesn't matter to James Gunn about this show. He doesn't care about it, okay? But that's sort of where I'm at now. This is my overall mood. This is my overall feeling. I don't give a fuck about this episode. Done. All right. Now, this truly marks 2024. December 2024 truly marks the end of an era. This ends, really, the end of sci-fi comic book series on network television. Now, we had Battlestar Galactica, we had V, right? You remember those shows. But a lot of sci-fi shows were just kind of experimental. I think, you might have seen something like Lost in Space, Star Trek, right? If you were lucky, anytime a sci-fi show, or I guess Batman, remember Batman, Batman, right? So you were lucky to have, if anything like Batman or the Green Hornet or Battlestar Galactica, anything like that came on television, it was an event. Like, wow, that came on television? Really? Holy shit, we gotta watch this thing that's not like a sitcom or a police drama. And I think it wasn't until Star Wars that they did Battlestar Galactica. So the 80s sci-fi stuff was really inspired. I mean, you got Star Wars kind of started a lot of things. They wanted to do something like that for television. But I'm pretty sure that it wasn't until we got to Star Trek: The Next Generation that we got a lot. We had so many shows. They would lead into Deep Space Nine and then Voyager. And then came Superboy, the TV series, which I remember fondly. I remember this show very well. Superboy, Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. common denominator is that these two shows lasted 4 seasons each. So when Superman and Lois lasted 4 seasons, it wasn't a big shock because you kind of knew it was going to happen. But we got baited and switched on what kind of show that was. And that prompted Fox to put out shows like, Mantis. Remember Mantis? I remember that show. That's the guy in the wheelchair, and then he could walk around. Or how about Fringe? That's a good show. John Noble's popularity rose after this. Do you remember Hercules and Xena? I remember this. I mean, they even had a cartoon that was on a VHS. You could watch Hercules and Xena. There was just like so many. They even had a young Hercules show with the same actor who played Ares. Yeah, Hercules, Xena. It was like the second coming after, what is it, The Bionic Woman and $6 Million Man. Different shows. I guess Knight Rider is technically a comic book show, right? Stargate SG-1, Stargate Atlantis, Stargate Universe. Remember this? Remember when we thought the movie was just the movie, and then they continued the series? They would go on and on. They even made a new The Outer Limits in the 2000s. I remember that. You even had, besides Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry had created. I guess it was other. There were other plans, but you had Gene Roddenberry's Earth Final Conflict, right? And then you had what is it? Andromeda with the Kevin Sorbo. Besides playing Hercules, he played a captain in Andromeda. And Xena, I think the last episode. I remember seeing the last episode of Xena. When did I see that? I don't remember if it was 2010 or a little later. But anyway, as Xena ended, then you had Star Trek Enterprise, which was the last of the Star Trek shows. I mean, you had a prequel show, right? So you had Star Trek Enterprise, which is kind of the end to the normal, like, Rick Berman network television run of Star Trek shows. And I think in a lot of ways, people had said that Rick Berman he had drained the well dry. He got everything he could out of the well to make more Star Trek shows. But as Star Trek was like dwindling down to nothingness, then you had Smallville. And Smallville was the other prequel besides Star Trek. You had the Superman prequel. And guess which one did the best? Smallville did the best. It lasted 10 damn seasons. Some shows like Birds of Prey did not do very well. I do remember they tried. They tried with other shows. Some time passed between Smallville's final season, final episode, and then a year passed. Nothing come out. And then they would advertise Arrow. And at first they said Arrow would be the spin-off of Smallville because there was already a Green Arrow character, but it's not Justin Harley. It was, what's his face? Stephen Amell, right? So you had Arrow, and I kind of had a funny fucking feeling that what we're looking at, was going to be a result of Arrow being on. You would have superheroes, you would have a Justice League of sorts. I told you my excitement for Justice League or Super Friends. You had the Ruby Rose Batwoman. You would have Sarah Lance, right, the White Canary, I guess. You would have the Flash. You would have Supergirl, Arrow, or actually Arrow's daughter, right? Since Arrow's already died, you have Black Lightning, and they'd all work together. You'd have the Wonder Twins and Gleek. That was the last time I gave two shits about. I think Superman, even Tyler Hoechlin's Superman was going to be there. That was the last time I fucking cared about any of this stuff, because after that crossover, the Crisis crossover, I stopped caring. It's like, fuck this, I don't care anymore. That was it. And we get to Superman, and we'll just leave it on this image because I just. So after Superman and Lois, there's really nothing else. Now with CBS, you remember how CBS treated their superhero shows? You had The Flash, right, with John Wesley Shipp and Supergirl. Even the Superman cartoon in 1988, every time there's a superhero show on CBS, it lasts one fucking season. Like there's like a 1-season rule. You never, ever, ever put a superhero show on CBS. Okay? You never do it because they just last like one season. It's just the way it is. And I told you what happened to, was it the Legends of Tomorrow? That turned to shit. Flash started to turn to shit. Supergirl was falling apart. Batwoman, nobody cared. Black Lightning, Arrow kind of died for me after the fifth season because it explained everything about where he came from and how he was. Didn't like Olicity. I didn't like Felicity. Didn't care about her. Superman was kind of cooler back then in the Tyler Hoechlin one with the Supergirl show. I don't know. There's a person who's actually watching Star Trek: The Next Generation. I didn't really start watching Next Generation, I think, until 1989, but I always saw pieces of it in 87, 88. I wasn't really focused on Star Trek: The Next Generation in the first couple of seasons. It wasn't until we got to close to 89 and then the Borg. That's when like everybody was paying attention to Star Trek. But we've had so many different shows, so many different things like Nightman, based on a Malibu character. What was that? Remember the character, the guy with the mullet that plays the sax? Da 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 da. Right? Uh, there's just different superhero shows that have been on and off. Legend of the Seeker. Remember that one? It was the one with Bruce Spence, who was in Star Wars. And that was on for a while. I think Craig Parker was the villain, stand up comedian. That lasted for 2 seasons. It was the last time Jolene Blaylock was in anything. Um, everything now is about 6 to 8 episodes or 10 episodes on HBO Max, Paramount Plus, Disney Plus, Hulu. This is over. This is dead. There's nothing left of the traditional tune in to ABC, tune in to CBS, tune in to NBC, tune in to the WB or the CW, tune in to Fox, tune in to My 13 for the latest episode of this thing. It's done. What's left over? Law and Order, NCIS, sitcoms. TV's fucking dead, isn't it? I just saw LeVar Burton. LeVar Burton he's doing a game show, but he doesn't have that charisma. I would say Anthony Anderson has the charisma. If you're talking about a person of color, maybe Lou Rawls, because Lou Rawls was charming. Uh, Somebody decided that Terry Crews should be a game show host, or LeVar Burton, or even Raven Simone. Uh, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head who else. Um, Chris Rock, maybe. Cedric the Entertainer did a little bit. It's worth what? I think that's the name of the show. It's worth what? That's the one with Cedric the Entertainer. So we turned the lights out, and I think that's it. Rest in peace, network comic book shows. This was a whimper that I went out on. Superman and Lois. What a waste of our time. I am not looking forward to any more. I think after 37 years from Next Generation, because it was a marathon, from Next Generation all the way to Superman and Lois, it's just, I'm not looking forward to much else. I'm happy to watch whatever's on YouTube, whatever's on Netflix, any movies I can go see. I'm going to go see Sonic 3 in December, this a couple of weeks. And that's it. James Gunn can eat my ass. I don't care what James Gunn is up to. I don't. The guy talks too much, okay? I don't care what's going on with Marvel. I don't really care. I'm having too much fun playing Hogwarts Legacy and just doing my YouTube content. I am my own network show, and that's all that matters to me. Does it matter to you? Stay tuned for more stuff right here on my YouTube channel, not on the CW. Good night.